Hello, I'm Victoria Pendragon. Welcome to my alternate reality, in which we explore all the different ways that a person can be their full interdimensional self. So, I started this when I was young. I started with shamanic journeying at about age 5. Of course, at the time, I didn't know it was shamanic journeying. I just did it. It came naturally to me. And so, when I was reintroduced to it in my 40s, during the period of time that I was dying, my teacher recognized my knack. And she had asked me at the time, did I want to learn about my power animal? We had been in a sweat lodge, and I didn't know much about any kind of alternative anythings at the time. And I said, yes, I'd love to know about my power animal. And she said, well, she could journey for me, and she would tell me what my power animal was. Or she could teach me how to do it, and I could go myself. And of course, I'm always a hands-on kind of person, so I said, teach me how to do it. And when she went to teach me how to do it, I kind of knew how to do it. Except I didn't know there were rules, because as a child, I just went. I dove into the earth. That's what I did. And in shamanic journeying, as it turned out, you went into the earth as well. But there was some caution to be exercised, apparently. I suppose in the innocence of a child, everything's fine. As an adult, you carry a lot more baggage with you. There are a lot more things, I suppose, that you could bump into. So just to be on the safe side, she gave me some rules to follow, and I followed them. I was interested to find out, as she was drumming for me and I was traveling, I had dived into the earth at a place of my choice, which was a place I had visited many times and been fascinated by. It's a place called Ringing Rocks in Pennsylvania. And every time I would go there, I would look down into the rocks. I was looking for something. So when she said I needed to pick a place, that was the very place it seemed logical to me to go. I'd already been there looking down between the rocks. And when I went like I went when I was a child. She had told me what I might expect in terms of going into the earth, but when I was a child, I dove in, and so as an adult, I dove in, and I saw like glowing insects everywhere around me. It was very cool. One of the things she had told me was to avoid insects and snakes if they came up. That was one of the rules. But I dove in, and there I was just surrounded by them. They were glowing and they were wonderful, so I didn't give it a second thought. But this is what I do, and they don't seem harmful or dangerous. And so off I went, and at one point I tripped over something and kind of almost fell, did one of those. And it was all of this exceedingly real and vivid, as though it were happening. It was not like when you visualize something. It was literally like being taken to another dimension. And that, I believe, is what occurs. And so when I was done my journey, when I came back, I laughed and I said, did you see me trip? Because my husband had been there as well, and he was just quietly sitting in a corner observing, and of course she was drumming and observing me. And they said, you didn't move the entire time. And I said, well, what about when I sang myself out at the end? Because when I had come to the end of this journey and I was returning to the world, I just felt filled with a sound. And so I made it, and it was quite loud. And they said, you didn't say anything. You didn't make any noise. And that was amazing to me, because it had been so real and so physical. And that is why shamanic journeying is shamanic journeying, and not just a meditation or taking a trip in your mind. or something like that. You enter a very deep trance-like state. And when you do that, your consciousness is altered. If someone were measuring your brain waves, I imagine they would see some sort of profound difference there. I don't know what it would be. I've read about it, but I never remember anything. Never have. That's kind of nice, actually. As I go into older age, I don't worry about not remembering anything. Not an issue. And my teacher, whose name was Deborah, had trained with Michael Harner, who is very well known in the shamanic fields. And the technique that she had taught me and the rules that she had given me came from that class. And what I experienced, on the other hand, I brought with me from my childhood, the diving in, the insects. And she had said, you know, avoid snakes. Well, in my journey, there was no avoiding snakes. They were everywhere. They were everywhere. Consequently, because of their presence and because she had told me to avoid them and don't speak to them, I came out of the journey quite uplifted, probably because it was like a return to my childhood and my knowingness. But I came out without a power animal because she had told me not to talk to these beings who seemed as though they were important to me. An eagle had flown in at one point, and I did my proper addressing to the eagle and asked it 3 times if it was my power animal, and each time it said no. So, no. And I left. And what she said to me was that these other animals, these snakes, had been such a vigorous presence that she suggested the next time I go back that it would probably be okay if I indeed interacted with them. And so on my next journey, which was a couple of weeks later, and again under her guidance as a teacher, she felt that she had a responsibility for training me, or at least observing me. And to me, she was a mentor, and I respected her gifts and her wisdom. And so we made a good team, and I went back under her guidance with her drumming again. And this time, again, the snakes were a vigorous presence, and I spoke with them, ultimately, after a very interesting kind of involvement with them. And when I say they were a vigorous presence, the entire ground was covered with them until a certain point when I got to a kind of a cave-like area, and ultimately met 2 of the largest snakes I have ever encountered living in person. I have never seen snakes this big in person. I've seen them on videos, on television, but I encountered them there. And in fact, they were my power animals. I had 2. They were snakes. It made sense logically when you came out. The caduceus, which is the medical symbol, has 2 snakes entwined upon it, and of course I was dying. And snakes shed their skins, and of course my skin was hard as a rock. And 2, they are symbolic of transformation because they shed their skins. And that seemed suitable and right, and she thought so as well. And therefore it was that I proceeded in my other searchings and travelings with my power animals that I'd gotten on my shamanic journeying, being 2 snakes, and connecting with them. When I went in for my treatments at the hospital a year or so, I guess it was probably that year that I entered into an experimental program. And I went in and put myself in trance state before the treatments and connected with my power animals that I'd gotten. Later, she asked me to teach with her, and later I taught on my own. And I found that everybody's journey is very, very vivid when they get that way. I recommend it strongly if you have access to a good teacher who knows his or her stuff. It is a wonderful way to be able to access other dimensions in a very conscious way. Well, I heard my little beeper. That means I'm done. So thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.